Hi, my name is Michelle Manson, and I am a violist, as you can see. I'm currently in my 4th year of undergrad at DePaul University. I'm studying viola performance, and I also have another major in psychology. In terms of my warm-up routine, I've actually been developing it quite a bit over this past year, especially given that I did have an issue with muscle spasms during 2021, and so it really forced me to figure out how to make my body feel the best that it can whenever I approach the viola. It is quite an extensive routine. It normally takes between 20 to 30 minutes. So if I don't have a lot of time, then I'll just do a couple of stretches, mostly with the upper body, and then go right into it. But for the most part, at least once a day, I like to do these warm-ups, even to just keep my body in a regular feeling on a daily basis. So normally I start off with a set of yoga, and it's really nothing too fancy. I get the yoga from the Nike training app. It takes about 10 to 20 minutes depending on the day and which routine I'm using, but nothing too drastic, all very low intensity. And then I go into my own routine, which I will show you here. So I start off trying to build myself from the ground up, and so I'll do a couple of calf raises where I essentially get onto my knees. I lost my balance there for a moment. Get onto my tippy toes, not on my knees. And just do that about 10 times or so, just enough to where I feel that I'm really starting to get some heat in my feet and calves. And then next, I'll normally do a few toe touches, go down all the way to the bottom, really relax the shoulders and let the arms just hang. And this really just helps to free up the back, especially when you're playing viola. We have to spend so much time like this, but in day-to-day life, right, we try to have good posture, and so that's the exact opposite of what we're doing here when we're stretching out our shoulders. And so essentially what I'm doing there is just really stretching out those muscles I'm about to use. Make sure that it's nice and loose and ready for me to start playing and lift up my arms for that long. And so then next, and that also will stretch out the hamstrings, which especially if we're playing while standing, which a lot of us practice while standing, then it's very easy to get tight in your legs, and so that's really helpful. And then next, just stretching out the quads. And this is very simple exercises. All of these things are fairly simple exercises and stretches. Nothing too intense. I'll normally do these stretches for between 10 and 30 seconds, depending on how tense I am that day. And so after I've stretched out my legs and it's time to finally work up into the upper body. So first off, I actually do something pretty similar to Alexander technique, and just kind of essentially move my body in any way that I'm feeling, loosen everything up a little bit, and really just start off with reaching up to the top. Stretching out my back muscles is really the important part here, and making sure that I'm doing a little bit of a back bend, a little mini back bend, and then breathe out and relax the arms. Shake it out a little bit. Start off with my shoulders, really, as you can tell, my shoulders and back muscles. Then next I'll do, I'm not sure exactly what it's called, but we'll call it a reach around. And I make sure that my arm, whichever arm is up, is completely relaxed into the other. So that way we can get the real stretch, and then just twist. And this is one that I think a lot of people know about and will do, but a lot of us still remain tense while doing this because it's such a simple exercise, right? We think, oh, okay, yeah, I can just put my arm here. But really making sure that every movement that you do is intentional and it is actually freeing up the muscles that we need. And then also just regular stretching behind the back. This one is definitely more for your chest. And if you feel really adventurous, dipping down. Today I'm kind of tense, so I don't think I'll be doing that. But essentially, lower your chest all the way down, and then come back up, and that stretches out your chest even more. And then I'll go ahead and start on my routine for my arms, which I think is actually the most it's the most intricate of the stretches that I do, and it's something that I have been developing quite a bit, and I'll show you now. So I stole a little bit of this actually from the app called Intermission. They have lots of really great stretches and warm-ups. Very highly recommend. Even if you don't do them all every day, then it's really great to just look at every now and then. So first off, I actually just start very simple with this stretch for basically the entire arm. And most people think of this as just a rich stretch, but really it really stretches this whole area here, and to a lesser extent this muscle right here with the twist. Do that on both sides, again for 10 to 30 seconds. And then go the other way, pointing the hand down. And it's very important during this to keep your shoulders and chest relaxed, because otherwise you won't be stretching out your shoulder. Stretching out your arm. You'll be using your shoulder, and that's not what we want with that stretch. And then I go in with this series essentially that helps to create motion in my arms. And so I start off with these little wrist circles, and essentially what I'm doing is using my hand as this sort of as like a some sort of mechanism as where the arm is staying completely still, the forearm isn't moving at all, and all the movement is coming from my hand. And so it's definitely a lot smaller than what you would normally expect from some sort of wrist exercise where we're doing that. It's very small movements, but it really does help to especially loosen up the sides of the wrist. And from here, I normally do these at the same time. Go both ways 10 times. And then I'll stretch out the fingers, come back. Stretch out the fingers, and come back. And while I'm doing this, I make sure to straighten out every finger, including my thumb. And so where everything is completely flat here, and then I come all the way back. And of course, again, the same with everything, the point here is to really make sure that you're not creating tension. If your hand can't go all the way flat, that is completely fine. You can build up to things like that. And then I also do the same thing to a lesser extent going inwards. In this angle, it's a lot harder to go completely flat, but again, just part of the goal. And then from here, I do essentially a similar wrist stretch as before, but this time I'm also moving my forearm. And so this one is where the bigger motion comes in. And my forearm and wrist are basically moving in tandem. And for all of these movement exercises that I'm going to be doing, I go both ways 10 times and switch directions. And then next from here, I do the same thing with my wrist and arm and forearm. The only difference is that I'm then releasing my bicep towards the ground. And this is very important because as string musicians, I find that we tend to not use a lot of our forearms, right? Our arms are always up. And so it's very easy for the triceps to get, tight in this stretched position, whereas the natural position is where it's more relaxed. So this essentially is promoting that relaxation in the tricep. And go both ways again. And the point with all of these is to try to keep it as fluid of a motion as possible. And from here, add on the shoulders. All the same motion, but you're just adding on things. And making sure that the wrist is also moving, and then go both ways. So now I feel like I have a lot of motion built up, and now that I have that motion, I like to just strengthen a little bit, because obviously not everything that we do while we're playing is using so much motion, so we do have to have some strength. And so what I do is I'll take one of these stretchy bands. This one is the one that I have, comes in different weights. This is the light version. Which is definitely great to start with. Even if you have a lot of muscle, I always recommend to start low and then work your way up. And the most important one for me, the most important exercise that I do with this is something that I actually learned in physical therapy while I was having muscle spasms. And essentially, you keep your elbows close to your chest, completely relaxed next to your chest, shoulders are relaxed. You start off in this 90-degree angle and then just stretch and come back. And while you're doing this, it's very important that you're not moving anything but the shoulders and arms, and moving the shoulder in this rotated motion and not lifting it or doing anything else. It's just this part rotating. And this is very helpful. I do this at the beginning of end of every practice, especially, again, we keep our hands in this position so much, and this uses way too much of this muscle here, and again, also the similar muscles over here, especially as we're on the A string. And so this is really great to make sure that even if we are using those muscles so much, that it gets released and worked out, at least at the end and beginning and end of every practice. It also is a very good chest exercise as well. And then the rest of the exercises actually that I do with the band are inspired by Violist Nancy Zhao. She has an Instagram where she posts a lot of her warm-up routine. And so one of my favorites is where it stretches up and then comes down. And this is a really great shoulder exercise. Also, this one is kind of like a bow and arrow, essentially. You're pulling it back and then going back. And do that on both sides. And again, just like every other exercise, a big goal here is to keep the shoulders relaxed. It's very easy for them to start to hike up keeping them relaxed and lowered. And then another great one is where I put the band around my foot, grab it with the hand, and essentially use this as a bicep curl. And where I only go up to 90 degrees. And I'm not doing it extremely well right now, but making sure that the wrist stays relaxed. It doesn't bend and crack. And then from there, that's when I actually pick up the viola. So I'll go ahead and show you now. I actually don't do that many warm-ups with my viola. Most of my warm-up is actually without the viola, which is pretty funny. So I start off in the middle of the bow, and just do a couple of up and down bows on the D. I prefer on the D string, and this just will help me to get the motion first on my wrist. I start with the wrist and then use my forearm, and then I only do slow bows on the in the upper half, and then the lower half, and then combine. And that seems like a lot, but it really doesn't. It only takes a few minutes. And so I can kind of show you how I do it. So start off with the wrist. And then add the forearm. And then only in the upper half. In the lower half. And then the whole bow. Obviously, I would do a few more bows than that, but essentially just getting in the motion. And then I'll do that same exercise on all 4 strings. And then what I'll do is do rhythms with the bow. So I'll start off with half notes, and I don't have my metronome right now, so I'll just kind of show you. So what I'll do is half notes, quarter notes, eighth notes, triplets, and then I go to quarter notes and sextuplets. And then if I feel like going any faster, then I will, but that's normally about at least how much I'll do. And this is essentially to just get in the motion of the different strokes into my fingers before playing. So I'll do. Pretty simple. And then actually for the left hand, again, really not a lot of exercises, only 2. Before I even try to play any note, put down my bow, and all I do is, everyone knows those metered vibrato exercises. I essentially do that, but without any sound. And start with the arm vibrato, and then get faster, and then go to wrist, and then narrow and fast vibrato. And I'll do that on each finger, on the D string or the A string, whichever feels easiest in the moment. Do that on each finger, essentially, so they can all get loosened up. And then lastly, what I'll do is just finger patterns, essentially. And sometimes I'll do this also in place of my scales. Don't tell my teacher. And I'll essentially do different combinations of high twos, low twos, high three, high four, high two, and high three, high two, high three, and low two and a high three. That sounds like a lot, but it's really not bad. And so maybe I'll just start off with what feels most comfortable for me is just high two and then a low three. And so essentially it'll be, and then maybe I'll add a low two. And then maybe low two and a high three. And then you can do any combination with anything, really get experimental and creative. And essentially this is just to really set up the hand frame before you try to play anything else. And yeah, so that's actually the end of my warm-up routine. I know it seems like quite a lot, but really it is so helpful. And I've noticed a big difference in my playing since I started doing this, because then when I come into the viola, when I finally am able to start playing, then it just sounds so much better. My body is way more prepared to take on my practice session. In terms of creating a warm-up routine, the most important thing is really to listen to your body and listen to what you're giving off that day. Because some days you may feel completely loose and free and be able to, do one or two stretches and then you can play and everything is fine. But then some days maybe, you're extremely tense and have to do a lot more. And everyone's body is different, and everyone's body changes day by day. And so it's very important to be able to listen to yourself. And then another tip is definitely get creative. It's so easy to just sit there and say, okay, well, these are the exercises that I've been doing and I'm going to stick with it. These are the ones that I know, and those are the only ones that I'm able to do, right? But it's actually very fun to come up with different stretches. Maybe you move your body a different way one day, do some weird thing, and it actually feels really good. Of course, be careful because you don't want to put any too much unnecessary strain on your body. But, figure out different things. And of course, talking to other people and hearing what other people are doing also really helps, because it's the same with everything else in life, really, where having that communication with other people can really help to give you ideas that you may not have thought of before that could actually be very helpful for you. And lastly, another tip is to really just stay open-minded. And that's not just in terms of what exercises you're doing, but in terms of yourself. Because really your practice time is your time to yourself. And at least that's how I like to approach it. It's my me time with my viola. And it's so easy to go into it saying, okay, I need to play these pieces, and I just need to rush through my warm-up routine and, do all of this so quickly so I can get to practice, because I really need to practice this. But really coming at it with an open and accepting mindset, Also understanding that it's not going to feel the same every day. And some days it'll be really hard, and some days it'll be easy. It really just depends on the day, and it depends on your mindset. But coming at your practice and your warm-up with an open mind and an open heart, because it's so easy to get stressed out, especially as a college musician. I get stressed out a lot, and it's very easy to take that into my practice room. But letting this be a grounding experience and not getting so worked up in how things should feel or should be, just letting things happen in your warm-up, and letting your warm-up also be a time of exploration, because maybe you're doing a certain stretch one day and you say, wow, this feels different when I move my chest in this stretch in this way. For example, I've done this exercise, this stretch for years, of course. But I never realized until recently that whenever I would do that stretch, I would tighten my chest and bring my arm too close into my chest. And so it wasn't really stretching my actual arm. And so developing that routine in a way that I'm able to change it eventually if something isn't working for me, right? If it's not working, you have to change it. But the overall arching testament is to really just be open and accepting in both your body and your mind, and really understanding that your warm-up is your time, and that mindset will go into your practice as well. Lastly, I'd like to share that in terms of both the warm-up and your practice and just overall life, I find that mindset is very important. Like I said, I'm a psychology major, so obviously I'm so concerned with mindset and mindfulness, right? But it is really important, and I think we forget what the true goal of mindfulness isn't to be this open and honest and heart opened person and calm and collected all the time. That's not the point. Really the point is to accept things for how they are, and in terms of both your warm-up and your practice and just life in general as well. It's very important to come at it with a mindset of exploration, whereas it's very easy to say this is how things should be, but really in things like this, there is no such thing as should be. There's no such thing as should be, because what is what is, and what isn't was never there. And so keeping it easy on yourself is very important. There's no linear path, as my mom always says. And just remembering why you're doing music, of course, but more specifically in terms of your warm-up routine, why you're doing this warm-up. You're doing it to prepare you to play. And so that's the goal. The goal isn't to be super flexible and do all of these things super well, right? And that takes lots of practice, right? But the point really is to prepare you to play and prepare your body and your mind for what's about to happen for probably the next few hours in your practice room.